Welcome to our Music Education in Action series, which is an online edition of modules in which we're exploring technology and how it's related to music in the classroom and in our teaching and learning environments. My name is Dr. Jennifer Lang, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Music at the University of Saskatchewan. And so joining me today and for all of these modules is Wayne Giesbrecht, who is the senior media developer of audio and video post-production at the University of Saskatchewan. So welcome, Wayne.
Hi, Jen. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you for this because I've worked with you many times in projects, and it's great to have your expertise. We did a series, or not a series, but we did a module previously on tools for remote instruction, and today we're going to look at microphones and different microphone options. And so Wayne and I will go into a battle of drop the mic, and we'll see who wins. And I can give you the spoiler alert already. It will be Wayne. So he is a great expert in all of this sound engineering. So Wayne, when we're looking at what microphones to use, what makes choosing the right microphone important?
There's a lot of factors, and one thing I was going to mention is that they're so ubiquitous. They're in all our devices. We just turn things on and it picks up sound, and so we often don't stop to think about why things sound the way they do. And when it comes to music, that's always a special consideration. It's one thing when you're chatting on Zoom or doing a phone call or something, and you just need to hear each other, and that's all that's important. But when it comes to music and trying to get quality music, whether it's just for someone else to hear or whether you're recording it, that's when the type of microphone you're using becomes more of an important consideration, and you need to you don't need to necessarily go out of your way to buy a lot of equipment, but you just need to stop and think about the type of microphone you're using for a given purpose.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we all know that especially for music, if we're doing some lessons or if we just need to capture really good sound, then sometimes our computer microphones just aren't equipped for doing that.
Right.
So in that case, what type of microphones are available?
Okay, well, I'll start with sort of how microphones are fundamentally built for two different types of categories, and you get what are called condenser microphones and dynamic microphones. And a condenser microphone, you'll often see people in a studio using something like this. It's one of these nice big fancy things, and that's usually a condenser microphone. And what they're designed to do is pick up a better frequency response. They can be a lot more sensitive for quieter things. They also require an electrical signal. They're more common now because every USB microphone that a person buys will be a condenser microphone. They plug into your computer and there's a little electrical signal that powers it. This is quite common in what people used to see, a lot of, rock bands and vocalists sort of use, and it's a handheld vocal style mic, and it's a dynamic mic. It doesn't require any power source. It just generates a tiny electrical signal that then needs to be amplified by another device in order for it to be able to be a strong enough signal for someone to be able to hear or use. So beyond that, when you get in sort of those two basic categories, inside each of those you have things like the directional pattern that the microphone picks up, and that's super important when you're considering a mic. You have what are called unidirectional microphones, which pick up whatever the microphone is pointed at. That's the primary area that it's going to pick up sound from. If it's an omnidirectional microphone, it'll pick up sound 360 degrees. It doesn't matter which way you point the mic, it picks up everything. And that's what you find in a lot of devices. Cell phones especially, they're sort of omnidirectional. Some cell phones now are trying to specialize and build mics that'll sort of pick up, when you're doing video, they'll pick up from a certain direction. But lots of those generic devices will just be an omnidirectional microphone. They just pick up everything around them. That can be useful, but of course, when you're picking up sound from all directions, you're also picking up any background noise that is happening as opposed to the person you're trying to, or the instrument you're trying to record or pick up. So that is really where those considerations really come into play.
Okay, that makes a great deal of sense. And so I'm wondering, are there specific microphones that are used for different situations? Like, do you use some for recording that are different than what you would do just maybe to do a podcast or something like that? Is there a different microphone one would use for instruments versus voice?
Definitely, and some of the things to think about when you're thinking about instrument versus voice is the actual volume level that that instrument or voice is going to be at. If you were recording things like drums, I've got a little microphone here that's just a great little doohickey that's designed specifically to record drums. It's got a little clip on it that clips onto the side of the drum. And of course, drums are really loud, so you need a microphone that's not too sensitive because it'll just overload and all you get is distortion. And in some cases, you can actually damage the microphone if it's not the right mic for the situation. Also, of course, being on a drum, you need something that could accidentally get hit by a drumstick occasionally and still survive, so that's always a thing to consider. So you wouldn't often use something like one of these big studio microphones unless it was further back and away from the drum, sort of recording the whole drum kit. But if you want to get in close, then of course you have to make sure that the microphone is able to handle that noise level. And the other thing is like things like frequency response and the way a microphone responds to an instrument. The handheld mic here that I showed earlier is great for a person who's holding it right close and singing, and it'll sound really good. But it doesn't always have that sort of quality to it that a studio microphone will have, or a condenser microphone, which can in general pick up higher frequencies and a wider frequency range. So things like pianos are a really good example because you've got on a grand piano you've got the whole gambit, you've got everything. When people compare frequencies, they'll usually do it as to this range on a piano kind of thing. So you need something that can pick up all the lows and all the highs, whereas some microphones just pick up sort of in the mid range, which is fine for a singer because the human voice doesn't really extend very low or very high in most cases.
Right. So if someone was just doing like a podcast for a class, what would they need?
Podcast for a class, and we get to circle right back to episode 1 and the good old Rode NT Mini here. This is a great little microphone. It's USB, and that's another thing to consider is your connection. Easy to plug in, plugs right into your device, and away you go. The other microphones that I was showing here are all of the style that require some sort of an interface to get to your computer or to your device. So you would need another little box to plug them into that has a microphone preamp. USB microphones are excellent in that case because they don't need anything in between, and so you can get, and there's a really great selection of USB mics out there. They're super popular now, and lots of people are using them for that exact reason. It's not quite as easy to run multiple microphones when you have USB. A podcast is a great example of a USB microphone's primary purpose. But if you wanted to mic an entire drum kit or 6 people performing in the same room, I don't think I've ever even tried to use that many USB microphones because your device likes to see the microphone as an audio device, not just a microphone. So if you were to plug in 2, it might not know what to do when you plug in that second microphone. So USB for a podcast, single source, works great.
That sounds great. Good. And those are the ones that we're using in the Department of Music as well.
That's right.
And I know there's another video that that you're presenting on how to use those as well. So we'll attach that to this this module. Now you had mentioned, Wayne, that certain things are good for maybe singers and instrumentalists. And as a singer, I'm wondering about the issue of popping. Sort of consonants and keys and those sorts of things, and if that's an issue with microphones.
Yeah, and it definitely is, and that sort of brings us to microphone technique and how you position your mic. And you'll notice this one. I've even heard a couple little pops speaking into it myself, and I'm about 4 to 6 inches away. It's interesting when you do this. You sort of do the hang loose symbol from Hawaii. That's a good way to measure your distance from the microphone. Actually, we used to tell people just be about that far away. But you still have to be a little careful, and if you're pointed directly into it, these mics are great, by the way, for that. They don't pick up nearly as many pops as some microphones. But you don't necessarily have to be right facing into it. You can actually, if I'm even just a little bit off, any air coming out of my mouth, if I pop a P, the mic doesn't pick it up. But it still sounds really good. The other thing I was going to mention is a cool little thing that people don't actually often notice is called proximity effect. And what that means is that as I get closer to the microphone, you can hear my voice sounds fuller and deeper. And of course, as I pull further and further away, not only are you picking up more echo from the room, but my voice sounds thinner. So if that sort of quality is something that you're considering and you need to be aware of that, then you need to get the mic either closer or further away. The other obvious one is no matter which mic you're using, if you've got any possibility of any background noise creeping into the audio signal, the closer the mic is to the source, the less background noise you will hear versus the sound source itself. So those are the two main considerations.
Okay, that's really helpful. And actually, when you were talking about the proximity to the mic, it made me just consider the importance of posture. And for musicians, we know that's really important. So we don't want to compensate in a way like our physical stature,
Mm-hmm.
which will compromise the tone and good vocal or instrumental technique. So we don't want to be like slouching down to to talk into a microphone if we're singing or we're demonstrating anything like that. We still want to maintain a musician's stance that's most effective for making music. And also, I'm wondering if you could speak to the role of the microphone. So I know that that often when people are with a microphone, they allow the microphone to do the work, and therefore they can get lazy in their technique, and they don't maybe focus on correct technique or projection or breath management, those sorts of things, because they think the microphone will compensate for that. And what I've always said is that you still need to do what is right for your voice and your instrument,
Yeah.
and just allow the microphone to amplify it, but not do the work that you're supposed to do, so that you fall into some bad habits. Is that a correct way to think about the microphone?
That's 100% correct. Whether it's the microphone or what your sound person is doing, the goal of that end of the technology is just there to capture what is going on and not to create what is going on. So and so that's where it can get tricky, because you can say that the microphone helped you or made you sound better or didn't make you sound as good or whatever, but really that's a factor of maybe having the right microphone in the right position, right? And so it's not really the microphone's fault. But there's a good performance is a good performance, and if the microphone is doing its job, it will really help bring that good performance out. Conversely, if your performance is not so good, the microphone never lies either. So
Yes, that's very good advice. And speaking about microphones that don't necessarily make you sound better or sound worse, but they just capture how you sound, are there microphones, though, that a person should try to avoid?
there are microphones that just aren't suited to certain situations. And one of the things I didn't sort of bring up, and we were talking about omnidirectional microphones and that sort of thing, you'll see people on TV all the time wearing this little clip-on mics. It's called a lapel mic. And those, again, are another one that's almost kind of like your cell phone mic. They're not really designed for a musical performance or anything like that. So that's the first one that comes to mind if you have access. I mean, not a lot of people really have access to those, but some of those little kind of specialty mics, don't waste your time trying to use one of those unless you're really stuck. I mean, at the end of the day, if you have nothing else to choose from, I would stay away from some of the really cheap stuff as well. I don't think, at the end of the day, you do get what you pay for. So a microphone that you don't have to spend a lot of money on a microphone, but if you go swing too far the other way, I don't think you'd be very happy with the results. And again, we mentioned earlier, like things like the microphone in your phone or your iPad, not always the best choice. I'm right now trying out a brand new iPad Pro, which is supposed to actually have really good microphones in it, but I haven't had a chance to really test them to see how different they sound. But they're supposed to have made some improvements there. Lots of these device companies are doing that now. They're putting microphones in their devices they're starting to consider sound. So some devices will have really good built-in mics, but generally I try to avoid anything built in. And again, if you're stuck and you don't have anything else, well, there's nothing you can do. The consideration there too is if you have a mic that just maybe is picking up too much of the room, try and get the device in a lot closer to the sound source. If you're on any kind of a budget or you don't want to mess with a lot of complicated setup, then things like these microphones that I've been showing that need a preamp and stuff, that's just adding extra equipment that you'd have to buy. So probably for most people that are going to be the audience for this podcast or this little video series, they probably aren't going to want to go that far. I did bring another example of a mic that you is really cool, what you might want to avoid. This little thing here, it looks like a lot like those other fancy studio mics. It's called a ribbon microphone, and it works on a slightly different principle. They have a little metal ribbon in them, and they, in the right application, they sound amazing, but they're also super delicate. So they're not, they don't like a lot of adverse conditions. So that's probably, again, you could end up spending a lot of money on something like that, or a bit of money, but it won't last very long. And I think that's another thing that you'll get with less expensive mics that will sound really good, but if be careful if you're spending a little less money, durability may be an issue. So that's something to sort of consider too. The first one that I picked up here, I've been using this for more than 10 years, and it only cost me like I think $99. It was a really good deal. It was like a blowout sale somewhere, but it is a less expensive mic, so I handle it with kid gloves. I keep it very well tucked away. If you're looking for a good choice that's going to be durable and get everything done, then some of these dynamic microphones are the best way to go because they're just less sensitive. But if you're podcasting, if you pick one of those, you're going to need a microphone preamp and all that other stuff.
Right. So if we're looking at the one in front of you, the ones that we're using for the Department of Music, and it's, you know, the USB, one source, we're looking at about $140.
I think they're around 140, yeah. And these are actually, these are sort of that best middle ground on a good quality microphone with some nice features. And it's the best thing. I mean, when you read a review and you sort of open this one up itself, it's really well built. You can tell they put some thought into building something that's going to last, right? You don't want to go dropping it on the floor, but it's a pretty durable, well constructed. It feels heavy. It's got a metal enclosure, so if it does get bumped or dropped, it's not going to crack open and get wrecked, you know. So these are a really good find, and that's been the sort of the upside of this pandemic is that with the amount of remote instruction and things that tools that people have needed, it's helped to push the development of all these really great tools that are still affordable for the masses, so to speak.
Absolutely. And so in our first module, we talked about tools for remote instruction, and today's obviously about microphones. Next time, we'll talk about video recording and some of the considerations to optimize the video part of our lives as we're in a visual world. So Wayne, I'd like to thank you for taking us through all of these topics about specific types of microphones and how to place them, and what are some considerations that we should be looking into in order to optimize our sound and to get kind of the biggest bang for our buck. So thank you very much, and we look forward to talking to you again about video recording next time.
Great, thanks, Jen. It was fun doing this. I get very nerdy about microphones, so that's a chance for me to
People like
put the
you.
tape on my glasses and get nerdy.